that don't know me, my name is Larry Sanacandro. I've been involved with the American Bar Association for the past 10 or so years. I serve the section a bunch of different ways. I'm involved with the Court Procedure and Practice Committee, involved with the Appointments to Tax Court Committee. I've been involved with the Christine Brunswick Public Fellowship Committee, the Pro Bono Committee. And I think my favorite level of involvement is as an ARGRET fellow mentor. And that's really, I think, the focus of today's discussion. David Farhat may be joining us in a little bit and also co-presenting. So if he comes in, just bear with us a little bit while we kind of adapt. So let me start off by thanking you all for being here. The service that you all are providing to the tax section and to the ARGRET fellows, is immensely important. I think that there has been a huge push by the tax section to increase membership, to increase the way that our existing membership looks and thinks and acts. And all of those are awesome goals that you all are furthering. And I think that in many ways, many of you are going to be kind of the initial person that your fellow is interacting with. And that's really neat because you have the ability to kind of mold someone's perception of the tax section from the outset and make sure that their experience with the tax section is as good as all of yours has been, because you wouldn't be here, quite frankly, if it wasn't worth your while. So we're going to do kind of a general rundown on mentorship. Haley was good enough to send us over some documentation. I don't know if that's been circulated to you all. It tends to be, I would say, I won't say generic, but more generalized in terms of a typical mentor-mentee relationship. And really what I wanted to do was run through that material at a high level and then just let you know kind of how I think the ARGRET Fellowship kind of differs. I hope that this is more of a back and forth. If you have questions as you're going along, please jump in, let me know. I'm happy to field those questions. Thank you all for being here. And if you have any initial questions, I'm happy to take them now. Otherwise, we'll start running through the material that Haley sent over. And if I'm looking away, it's because I'm looking at my other screen. No questions? Okay. So my understanding is that each of the ARGRET fellows is assigned two mentors. And generally, I think that is a more senior person and a more junior person. And if you are not sure which one of those people you are, you should speak to Melissa, speak to Haley, and get a better understanding for kind of what role you're going to fill for your fellow.
Larry,
and the reason I think that
Sorry, can I interrupt? This is just student mentoring, so it's not ARGRET, but I did open it up to ARGRET mentors as well. So this is just for students. So these mentors here are going to be mentoring students either one-on-one or in a group. So just not ARGRET, but it's just more general.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
No, not at all. I appreciate the clarification because I'd come back to the ARGRET Fellowship time and time again. Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. Haley, if you can just give me sharing ability, please, and thank you.
Okay, you should have it now.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and hopefully you're seeing a screen with a PDF on it and nothing more, right? Okay. So really, the mentorship process consists of generally 3 stages. The first one is building rapport with your mentee. The second one is setting direction with your mentee. And the last one is making progress and moving on with your mentee. And if you think about what the process of building rapport is, it's kind of that initial outset, that initial outreach where you're kind of both staring at each other from opposite sides of the rooms and you're not really too sure about who that other person is, right? And you may not have that level of skepticism, but your mentee in many ways likely does, because they may be wondering, well, why is this guy so willing to help me, or why is this woman so willing to help me? And I've definitely gotten that kind of feedback from mentees that I've worked with. So the first step in the process, as I see it, is all about building rapport. Once you build that rapport and you build that kind of baseline additional understanding, and we'll talk about how to build rapport, both within the confines of these slides and then maybe some softer points for how to do it. It's really setting direction, right? Helping your mentee accomplish the objectives that your mentee wants to accomplish overall. I think it's important throughout the course of the mentorship to evaluate, whether and to what extent you're hitting milestones and achieving goals, and quite frankly, giving your mentee the things that they need to pursue or continue on in their career or their fellowship, whatever it may be, whatever you're mentoring them on. And quite frankly, if you're not, maybe to recognize that and to help them pivot to a new mentor who can help them, accomplish their objectives and their goals. So that is really an overview of what we're going to talk about, and we'll spend a little bit of time on each of the 4 processes. First, in terms of building rapport. The role of the mentor is really where the focus is for purposes of this presentation. A mentor is intended or expected to meet with their mentees at least once a month, either in person, over the phone, or virtually. And you need to figure out what works for you. You're all busy people. Your mentees may be very busy people as well. So it doesn't need to be once a month, but it should be a regular basis. And it should be kind of set forth at the outset of what the expectations are going to be. Maybe you start off in the beginning meeting with them more frequently until you build that rapport and they feel comfortable reaching out to you for any reason or no reason at all. During kind of that initial call, I think it's helpful to do, a general introduction, who you are, what you're doing there, and just give them an understanding of why you're involved in the process. And at the same time, to elicit feedback from them as to what they're hoping to get out of the process. During the course of that, interaction, I find it very helpful to make yourself vulnerable, quite frankly. Share the things that maybe you aren't comfortable sharing in a large room that will make people understand that you were once in the exact same boat that they were in, right? Where they didn't really have much guidance. They didn't really understand, what a mentor was versus what a mentee was and how to make the most out of that relationship. I think it's also important to understand, I was talking about multiple mentors. A lot of us wear different hats, right? Sometimes we wear the hat of a mentor. Other times we wear the hat of what I think of as a sponsor. And you need to understand why that person is coming to you and what they're hoping to get out of you. Because a lot of the times, and you've all had it, or many of you have had it, where individuals will reach out to you under the pretense of a mentorship. And what they're really looking for is a job, or a letter of support for a fellowship that they're applying for, or a letter of recommendation, or whatever it may be. And those people are really asking you to be their sponsors. They're not asking you to be their mentors. They're not looking for you to give advice on a daily basis about how they can accomplish their own objectives. They're looking for you to be a stepping stone for them. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of you have served as sponsors, including to me. And I'm very grateful for that, over the years. But recognize that, right? And embrace it. You may not be willing and comfortable being a sponsor for somebody. I mean, if you kind of think of what, the initial really basic differences between a mentor, I mean, the mentor is going to be providing guidance. They're going to be providing advice. They're going to be providing support. Especially at an ABA tax section meeting, they're going to be a friend. They're going to make sure that their mentee has someplace to go for dinner, that they have goals defined before they attend the meeting, and they are accomplishing those goals. Those goals could be anything from, getting great exposure to a particular CLE, or getting introductions to particular types of people. And I would consider that all of kind of falling under the umbrella term of how a mentor should work within the ABA tax section. A sponsor is going to be different, right? A sponsor is going to actually advocate for the career or the advancement of their particular person that they're sponsoring. And many times they're going to go out on a limb. They're going to use their own political and social capital in order to help a particular individual advance in their own career aspirations. And again, that's perfectly fine. It's just important to understand, I think, at the outset, kind of what your mentor wants or your mentee wants. And if you're not able to give them what they want, or you're not sure whether you're able to give them what they want, be upfront about that. And I think all of that goes to building rapport. And quite frankly, making good use of your time, because if you're dealing with somebody that is only there to, leverage your social capital, and you're not willing to let someone leverage that social capital, then it's important that you kind of shift that person, the mentee, to somebody else who will do those things for them. Go ahead. Was there a question?
No, sorry, Larry, just to jump in there. First of all, apologies, I'm a little late, but to jump in there, Larry, I think one of the biggest things with this is really about building trust, right? And making that trust a two-way street. And I think that's one of the key roles of the mentor. And I really love how Larry kind of laid out, the early part of the relationship and setting a schedule, meeting, getting to know each other, understanding what the mentee is looking for, and understanding also what you as the mentor is willing to give. And kind of setting up that trust is the only way you can have an effective mentor-mentee relationship. And for some reason, some folks, you can't set up that trust, right? And it's not the fault of the mentor, it's not the fault of the mentee. Folks may be looking for different things, folks maybe have different availabilities. And being honest, right? And I think that honesty and that openness is a good way to develop trust. I love how Larry was talking about the difference between the mentor and the sponsor. A lot of your mentors are not necessarily your sponsors. A lot of your sponsors are not necessarily your mentors. And understanding what folks are looking for in that relationship to be able to have an effective relationship, have good communication, and building trust. I think that's the key piece in a mentor-mentee relationship, is that trust. Without trust, it can't be successful, right? Without being able to give your mentee bad news, right? If that's necessary, to say, listen, you're not doing this right. I think you should be, you're doing X, I think you should be doing it. Or you're not being that effective. I think you need to push. I think you need to, or hey, these are your goals. I don't think they're realistic. You might want to pivot a little bit. And I don't think you can really do that unless you build trust. And also on the mentee side, lots of people go through the motions, right? Because typically, if you have a mentor, they're in a position. I think, Larry, you're talking about people's social
Capital. Yeah.
Capital. Yes, that's the word. Thank you. People's social capital, and you have a lot of respect for the person that's a mentor, so you don't want to disappoint them. So sometimes, if you don't have that trust, you may not tell them the truth. You may go through the motions. You may not say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," because you just want to make them, look upon you highly, or you want to be able to use them as a sponsor, right? So you may not want to say something, as damaging as, "Listen, I'm struggling with my writing, or I'm struggling with being persuasive. I'm struggling with understanding this issue. I'm struggling with doing this." So that trust has to be built, and we have to be patient when building that trust. Right. So I think that's really key. And I really wanted to kind of add that in, Larry, to those points. And again, really, really sorry I jumped on this.
No, David, it's great that you're here. And thank you. I would say in terms of building trust, I mentioned the word vulnerability. And one of the ways that I will try to, build trust with the people that I'm interacting, and to reflect honesty, is to kind of explain to them what my path has been. And my path has been, non-traditional, I think, in many ways. And what people see, now is very different than like who I was 10 years ago, right? I was still very much so trying to figure it out. And I'm still trying to figure it out, but in a different way. And I don't necessarily always exude that, right? But I make it very clear, and I kind of bring myself back to where I was 10 years ago, in that person's shoes. And let them know that, like, it's okay. Like, we were here too, and you'll get through it. And I think that once you do that and people recognize that you're human, right? That you were once in the same boat, that helps to build the trust.
Yeah, that's really key. And for folks many mentors who are advanced in their career, we look in the mirror and we still see that kid that started, and we see that vulnerable piece, but that's not how our mentees typically see us. Right? They, especially when you have that partner label next to your name, it becomes scary for some folks. So building that trust by kind of saying, "Hey, listen, I made mistakes too, or I had a difficult time doing this," or as Larry said, "I had a non-traditional path here." That vulnerability really helps.
Yeah. And on the subject of trust as well, I think another thing that's helpful to build trust is to be responsive. Like a lot of us are busy people. And we tend to say yes to things when people ask us, which may be the reason that some of you are sitting here. But if you're doing this, do it all the way, do it 100%. And if you've got, some younger law school student who's reaching out to you, asking for your time or asking for a time to speak or whatever it may be, respond to that email. Like, even if it's, hey, I'm really busy and I'm sorry and I'll get back to you. Make sure you respond to that email, because nothing will turn somebody else off to an organization, to a career, to a profession, more so than kind of being given the cold shoulder. So that, I think, is another way it's very helpful to build trust.
I did have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, Brian, hi.
Okay. How come my name's all lower caps? Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Don't have the capital. I do my emails, it's my name. So are there possibilities of having the mentee be local to where you're located? Is it just kind of luck of the draw, or is this pretty much considered to be remote, or through the internet and phone and that?
So
Yeah. So Haley, do you want to speak to it?
sure, yes. So Linda Whitfield actually she put together all the mentors and mentees actually. So I need to take a look at it, but from my understanding, it will be mostly virtual, I believe. I'm not sure if she did it based on location, but I will double check, and you all will be receiving the matches shortly, so you'll be able to see. But yes.
This is Sarah. I helped with the
Oh,
with
okay,
the-
perfect.
because of the overwhelming responses we had. We originally envisioned trying to do geographic matching, and it just wasn't possible this go round. So it's going to be probably virtual, just because of the luck of the draw.
And so can we anticipate that some of these mentees might be working at law firms, or are they mostly like 1L going into 2L kind of thing?
We prioritized first the LLMs and then
Okay.
JDs with 1 semester left, and then went down through other JDs. So it's limited to law students.
So there's a possibility that the mentee might be actually working at a firm or interning at a firm, a tax firm, or doing tax work already, correct?
Through
Through like
the summer internships, it's possible.
Okay.
So I have a question, if that's okay, and this might not be the right place to ask it, but I'm going to be a group mentor. So I'm probably going to have a variety of people in my pool that are at various stages, as you just discussed. Can I get a list of the emails and the names of the people, the formal names, and can I share that email list with the members of the group? Because they're going to learn from each other as much as they learn from me, if that's possible.
Absolutely, yes. I will be
Okay.
I will be circulating that list to all the mentors and mentees.
Okay.
I'll be giving that to you by the end of this month.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Mhm.
David, just switching gears a little bit, is there anything else you want to cover, maybe on the broad scope of the role of the mentor and the mentee, or do you want to talk about kind of that initial call and the way you handle it?
Yeah, I want to talk about the mentee a little bit before jumping on the call. I think one of the best pieces of advice a mentor gave me when I was coming up, she said, "I can't care about your career more than you do." Right. And I think that's why it's important to talk about the role of the mentee as well. We can put a lot of effort in. What's the old saying? You can force a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That kind of thing, right? So I think sometimes we may overdo it, wanting to do the right thing and wanting to get it right, and some mentees may not be responsive. I think for this to be successful, we have to encourage our mentees to be responsive, and we have to encourage our mentees to push, but we have to understand that we're going at their pace, right? For better or worse. And we have to let them do that, and we have to let them take the initiative. And sometimes you get the mentee early on, that's the perfect mentee. They call the right time, they schedule things, they push, they annoy, they do all of this, and you're like, yes, this person's a go-getter. And you have other folks that are maybe a little bit more passive. I think the key is to not get frustrated by that, to understand that we need to let them do that, but they need to make that step, right? We're in a career where you have to kind of go get things, and you have to show that motivation, and it's part of it, and we can help them with that. But I think it's also key to remember that we're not dragging folks along, because that can be just as harmful as other things. But yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to add before we got to the introductory call, Larry.
No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, and just to maybe follow up on Brian's point, even if you're not, in the same city as your mentee, make an effort to come to the meeting early, right? To schedule an early morning breakfast, to take your mentee out for drinks before dinner, to drag them along to your dinner, or, even better, go to a dinner that they want to go to that may not be with the crowd that you usually run with. And I think that will bring you back to where you were, 10, 15, 20 years ago, however long ago since you've been involved with the tax section, and encourage you to reach out to people and meet new people, all of which is kind of what this is designed to do, right? So just let's switch gears a little bit, David, and let's talk about the introductory call. So I think everybody probably has their own style for an introductory call, but do you want to just talk about kind of how you kick off the relationship with a mentee?
Yeah, happy to do so. I think what I typically like to do is talk about what we're here to do, kind of get the goal, as the point says, get the goals of the relationship. But what I like to tell them is, this is your time, right? I've made this time for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Let's discuss, because you'd be surprised what they say at times, and it's a lot easier, I think, to kind of carry on a discussion if you throw it over to them and allow them to ask questions. Now, that's not always successful, because sometimes folks have nerves. Sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm here to be mentored. You tell me. So it's good to be prepared as well. As I like to tell people, I'm a product of many, many, many great and very patient mentors. So sometimes I like to tell a story of mentorship that I have experienced. I think that helps to break the ice. I think that helps to make people comfortable. And I think going with Larry's great point about kind of showing vulnerability and showing that I've been down this road too, is very helpful. Scheduling things then can be great, right? Saying, hey, listen, this is what works for me, what works for you. So we can start putting some things in the book. Being very transparent about the lives we lead as tax lawyers. I may put something in the calendar today, and it may be good today, and it may be good up until an hour before the meeting. But there's a possibility that it can move. And I think that goes to Larry's point about, being responsive and communicating, but also, being honest and building trust and setting up the expectation that, listen, I do really want to talk. I do care about this. I do really want to do this. But part of the world we live in, sometimes a client or the IRS may come first, and you might get bumped, but don't take it personal. There will come a time where you will have to apologize to other people about the same thing. So just kind of setting those expectations, setting those goals, I think can be very good for a good call for a couple of reasons. One, it sets expectations, and I think two, it gets people at ease because you have something to talk about. You have getting rid of the procedural can get folks into the real substantive part of the conversation as well.
That's awesome. One thing that I like to do during the introductory call is figure out like whether the mentee is happy with where they are or whether they're looking to pivot, right? Because I think a lot of the times, as mentors, we tend to want to push people to where we are, right? And think that like they should be where we are, either in life or professionally or whatever it may be. But I think you're going to find that a lot of your mentees are very, very good where they are. They're looking to branch out. They're looking to meet other people. They might be looking to pivot their career. But really, like I use that first call to listen. And I ask a lot of open-ended questions and really try and understand, like, okay, I understand who my mentee is now. What are they trying to accomplish? Am I able to help them accomplish that? And how am I going to help them accomplish that? So I think listening is really, really important during that first call.
100%.
Yeah. I think it's also important to maybe when you send that initial email introducing yourself, to kind of set the stage for what the call is going to look like, right? So it's not just kind of you talking and them absorbing all of this information about somebody that they've never met before. but kind of give them an opportunity to say, like, I want to talk about what you're trying to get out of the mentorship, right? And give them an opportunity to think about that, mull on it. Some of them will reduce it to writing. Others already pretty much know what they're doing and why they're here.
Yeah, that's a great point, Larry, because culturally, some folks, and I can, speak from personal experience, some folks feel, especially if you're in a position with an authority figure, I'm here to listen. I'm not supposed to be talking. I'm supposed to be taking it in. And really giving that, permission to, okay, come in and ask questions. We're supposed to be talking. I'm not just talking at you. Ahead of time is a good thing, right? So then folks can, as you're mentioning, like, folks can prepare and come in and ask a question. Because I think for me, the best first calls are ones where the mentee's firing off questions, right? Because sometimes the questions are horrible, but even getting a horrible question is a good thing, because you can say, hey, listen, I know that's the question you want to ask, but let's talk about that, right? It can sometimes questions give you more of an insight than statements do, right? To kind of understand direction and understand where this person is. And as Larry was mentioning, are you happy with the direction you're going in? And sometimes for us saying, hey, listen, I understand that's a direction you want to go in, but let's unpack that. Is that really something, a direction you should be going in, or something you should want to be doing? So yeah, giving them that opportunity, and not just the opportunity, but the permission, I think that's key. The permission to come in prepared to pick your brain and ask questions is really important.
Yeah.
So
No,
if
for
I
sure.
may follow up on David, it sounds like
Sure.
that a large part of this, maybe the largest, is really about them developing professionally more so than drilling down in the tax area, or
100%.
am I reading it right? Okay. This is
100%.
okay. Because I've done some internships with paralegals, with law students, LLM, done internships and helped them. And that's really, you kind of really get into the work, and you can tell they're already coming in focused on that area. But here
And to be honest, I think it's a bit of both, right? It's about understanding what your mentee needs and wants, right? And I think sometimes the tax will come. Let's be, we work in a very hard area, and it's so vast. And one of my mentors told me, you don't get comfortable practicing tax till you've been doing it for 20 years. And when I hit the 20-year mark, I realized I got comfortable, not because I knew more, but just because I was comfortable not knowing. Right. So it's sometimes when folks are coming into tax, especially at the level we're talking about, you know enough to be terrified, right? Because you've seen so much of it, and it's like, yeah, so yes, sometimes it is the tax, talking people through tax issues, especially in the tax world we're in now, where everything is just evolving, right? And telling them, listen, this is a good opportunity, because the old folks aren't going to have an advantage over you because everything's so new. But it's giving comfort around the technical. And if they want to talk technical, we dive into talk the technical, but also kind of helping them develop as good tax lawyers. And I think part of being a good tax lawyer is being comfortable with the unknown, being comfortable with the ability to kind of go in and explore, and being able to use your creativity. Because I think for all of us who have been successful in this field, we really took off when we got comfortable being creative and not being afraid to make a mistake. And I think one of my partners, Nate Carden, says, when we feel like we've got a safety net as we're walking the tightrope. So kind of giving them that world, in my opinion, is a really good way to be a mentor.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that a lot of people don't have that safety net,
Absolutely.
that David's talking about. That they might be at a small firm, or they might be at a smaller city, or they might be at a huge firm that just has them doing what they do, or the people that are there might not be willing to make the time for them. So to David's point, like I think the key is to be flexible, right? Like if they're looking for professional guidance, give them professional guidance. If they're looking for technical guidance, either A, give it to them, or B, put them in touch with somebody who can give it. And that's a lot of the relationships that I've had, with mentees, where they are in very large firms and they don't have anybody that kind of takes the time to listen to them, and what they're hoping to accomplish, because the client comes first, or the deliverable comes first. And then there are others that, I've had mentees say to me in connection with the tax section, like, this is crazy. I had no idea that there were people like me out there. And that's, I mean, that is their view of the world, right? Like they were not aware that there was somebody else who had this love for tax, like them. And you know, that's also a very, very good way during this introductory call to like help bridge the gap, right? Like I think during the introductory call, you should talk about what's going on personally in people's lives as well, and try and understand who they are as people. And I think what you're going to see, especially depending upon the type of mentor that you are a lot of differences, right? It might be age differences, it might be racial differences, it might be gender differences, but there is that commonality in tax, okay? And that's always something that you can gravitate towards to you know, create comfort for people.
Yeah, and another point, to expand on, Larry, talk about some people not having the safety net, but it's also not just not having it. Some people have it and they just don't know it's there. Right. So exposing them to that as well, telling people the questions to ask. Because I've talked to several folks that are like, they feel like they're alone, they feel like they're terrified. And you start, well, they feel terrified and you're going through it and you say, well, have you done this? Have you talked to this person? Have you? So just kind of opening their eyes to the availability of this mentorship, right? And to, you know, what kind of questions to ask in their firm, and to explain the idea of how these places work, right? What does it mean when I say the client comes first? What does it mean when I'm talking about, you know, billable hours? And what does it mean when I'm talking about time is money, right? So that they understand, you know, lots of these folks come in with, you know, just the educational experience. I've gone to law school, I've gone to college, and they've done jobs where it's, I ask you to do A and you do A. Right? That's not how our world works. It's not like it's in school, you get a grade for everything and you're told what's going on. The expectations are different. You need to go after certain things differently. You need to think outside the box. Yes, you were asked to do X, but did you also do the next couple of steps? Did you, you know, what does it mean to be responsive? And explaining it to folks, because you'd be surprised sometimes when someone goes, oh, I'm allowed to do that, or I didn't know that was there, or can I ask them that? And to tell folks, listen, I know as a partner, sometimes when I get busy, I put blinders on, but it doesn't mean that I don't care. Your partner, your senior associate, your counsel may be the same way. So ask for feedback. Ask for, you know, why did you make this mark on a memo? You know, those kinds of conversations, I think, can be, you know, just talking about feedback and what to expect going into this world, I think is really important.
No, that's a great point. So David, what do? You have that initial call, and then how do you follow up with it? I mean, how do you kind of set the direction for the relationship that is going to transpire?
Yeah, so on that, this goes back to the point about, you know, the mentee having to take the reins, right? And I think this is a good opportunity to allow them to do that. Once you have that introductory call, you put together a cadence, and you know you're going to meet that cadence. And what I tend to say to people is, listen, I get distracted. I am like a ferret at times where it's the next shiny thing and I run towards it. It doesn't mean I don't care. So you have to stay on, right? Send reminders. Let's make sure we're doing certain things. If you want me to look at something, send it. And I kind of set that up front and allow them to, okay, let me see who I'm working with. If this is one of those people who is just, then okay, I'll let them control the relationship and we'll talk to that. But if this is someone who may be a bit more introverted, someone who may not be comfortable doing that, then I may send a note, hey, remember we discussed this, are we still catching up? Are you still free? Are you going to send me? And just kind of little breadcrumbs after that if the person's are less responsive, and go with it. I hesitate to completely take the bull by the horns and just, you know, push them a certain way, because again, that, you know, that statement my mentor made to me really resonated. I can't care about your career more than you, right? For this to work, you have to care about it. So I need, you know, I want to give them the room to show me how much mentorship they want, right? And then follow along with it that way.
Yeah, no, that's great. I personally like to develop goals, and hard markers, you know, whether it be as simple as, all right, great call. Our next call, let's set it for 30 days out, right? Or 2 weeks out, or whatever it may be. That's a hard marker for you, right? And then if there's a tax meeting coming up, encouraging them to attend that tax meeting if they're not already planning to do that. And finding out, again, what they want to accomplish at that meeting, meeting people, attending particular seminars, coming to particular committee breakfasts or lunches or whatever it may be, helping them walk a room, right? Or letting them walk a room with you and being introduced to the different people that or both of you being vulnerable and introducing yourselves to people that you don't know. So to me, all of that is kind of in furtherance of bringing them into the tax community, making them feel comfortable, making them feel welcome, which I think is largely what this is all about.
Yeah. No, and I like that quite a bit, talking about, what we do at the tax meeting, and hey, make sure you find me at the, I think that's great. Because again, it's about giving that permission to, hey, you're allowed to annoy me. Right.
Right.
So folks aren't thinking that they're being paid by doing that.
Right. And it's a lot. I mean, look, when I go to a tax meeting, I mean, I kind of have, my lunches, my dinners planned out. Like I know ahead of time what I'm going to be doing. And if I know that I am mentoring somebody, I take myself out of that, right? Like I'll still meet somebody for drinks ahead of time to still have the time that I want to still make my meeting meaningful. But I'll say, hey, like, I'm a controversy person. If you want to go to partnerships, if you want to go to corporate, if you want to go to international, I will go with you. And we'll both introduce ourselves to everybody together. And you're amazed at how much fun, like I really forgot how much fun it kind of is going to, one of those meetings where you don't know anybody, and just how warm of a community that we really do have, where I think people are very, very inviting, whether you're, 2 years out of school or whether you're 20 years out of school.
And another thing about mentorship, make it a team sport, right? So if you've got something you really want to do and they want to do something else, say, hey, listen, I'll introduce you to so-and-so and see if you can sit with him or her. Because again, that's part of it, right? You're helping them build the network. So that, hey, listen, I may not be able to be with you between this period, but hey, if you want to do this, I know so-and-so is doing that. Let's, I'll make sure you catch up with them, and then we'll catch up afterwards. So that kind of thing is also great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. In terms of goals, there are certain things I think that you can structure the goals around, and they're specific goals, right? What specifically is your mentee trying to accomplish, and how can you measure that, right? Have you ticked off all the lists? And a lot of the times what I'll do is after a meeting, I'll check back in and say, hey, how did we do? Now what goals do you have? And to me, that's how you kind of build on the existing relationship that you have. You also want to make sure that the goals that you're setting are attainable. And I think that that's very important. Like to David's point, that you tell people, like, you're just not at that point in your career yet where they're going to vote you committee chair yet. Like, we'll get you in there, right? We'll make you a liaison. We'll introduce you to people. And that's how the progression works within the tax section. All of that to me is a very realistic way to help somebody achieve their goals professionally within the ABA or otherwise. David, anything to add about goals and achieving goals, measuring?
Yeah, I
goals?
think what you've said is perfect. Attainability is key. But I think we need to work with our folks in goal setting for a couple of reasons. I think a lot of times in our profession, we see the extremes, and I like the example you use. Like we see these people that are really driven and really want to go, and we've got to pull them back a little bit. I think we should be very open and honest about doing that. And then we have others we've got to kind of drag, right? Where it's like, I see the potential. No, you should be aiming higher, right? I see you're doing well, and kind of get them there. But I think the thing about goals is we should make sure they don't become the driver of this, right? Because I think that can be a bit dangerous as well. I think we should really look at it as the relationship and the trust being the driver. Goals are absolutely important, but I don't think we should kind of, as they say, you teach to the test. We shouldn't necessarily be teaching to the goals. We should allow room for those goals to evolve, right? For people to run past them, or at the same time to fall short of them and still understand that was a success.
Yeah. And that probably depends so much upon the type of mentee that you have, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
somebody that has that experience, that grew up with it, or has never been exposed to, let's say, a professional setting as a result of family or otherwise, might not be as hungry to say, this is what I want, David, and help me get there.
Yeah.
At least that's my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. Um,
Yeah, I
let's
think
talk
that,
about,
yeah.
go ahead, David.
Yeah, I think fostering the relationship is key. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about, vulnerability and trust. We have to remember at the start of this, we're people. We don't know what folks are dealing with. And to give an example, I remember early on in my career when when you're at that age where you're just making the transition from only being a mentee to start mentoring people. I met a young woman that I still think is one of the best tax minds I've come across. We worked together. She never made the same mistake twice, if she made a mistake at all. She saved my bacon on a few things by catching certain things, and I just thought she was just absolutely amazing. And I kept telling her, "You'll make partner one day. You'll make partner one day." And I never realized the reaction from her when I would say that. And one day we're talking and she was like, "You know what? I'm not gonna, be client facing anymore. I want to do this." And I'm like, "No, what are you doing? And then we had a real frank conversation about, her family life and what she was going through and priorities. And I felt horrible, right? I'm sitting here looking at this. Okay, I just think you're such a great tax mind, and this is what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And she had other priorities that were, she opened up to me that I was like, wow, I didn't realize you were going through this. And yes, you can still be a successful tax professional and, take care of family and do these other things and understand you have different, different priorities and different things going on in your life. So when it comes to fostering that relationship, I think we should be mindful of some of that, because I think as mentors, we relate, especially when we see something in someone else that reminds us of ourselves or reminds us of the best parts of ourselves or what we aspire to be, right? We want to coach. We want to say, yeah, you can do it. I want to see you, break all of these records. I want to see you being the best. But kind of understanding that that vision may not be the best vision for them. And it might not be what they want or need. Right? It could be just the opposite. It could be a person who has these, massive, massive goals and you need to rein them in. But it also could be us as the mentor having these massive, massive goals. And we need to rein them in. So kind of fostering that relationship is trying to understand the person first and the tax lawyer second. And I think that's how we build, great relationships, and we build a strong tax bar, because if we can get these folks comfortable in talking and, figuring out what's best for them, which may be what they have expressed that they want to do, or, might be in the back of the mind, or might be something with our experience might be better for them, is learning how to understand that person. And I know I'm kind of talking around the topic a bit because it's, a lot of different ways, but I think learning that person and getting that relationship is key, and it can be something that pays dividends over a lifetime, not just for them, but for us as well.
David, what do you do when you see one of your mentees just making a mistake, and you also maybe you feel that they need to make that mistake in order to recognize it for themselves?
Yeah, that's hard, especially when you add that second part, right? That needing to make the mistake part, where you're saying, especially if you're telling them the opposite, right? If you're saying, "Hey, listen, this is what you need to do," and they say, "Oh, I really want to do this," you've got to realize they're adults and be there for them.
Right.
I think that's where, going back to the initial part of the conversation, the vulnerability and the trust, and being there, not being the "I told you so" person, right? Saying, "Okay, this is what's happened. Now we got to kind of get back on track." But I think the honesty is very important, right? To be able to say to someone, "I'm going to be here, but I think you're making a mistake." Right? I mean, because that's very valuable, because when they realize it's a mistake, it gives them that permission to come back and talk to you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is a very good thing, because the last thing you want is for a mentee that you see has promise, you see has talent, to make the mistake and then not come back, because that's just kind of, adding on to the mistake.
Yeah. Not for sure. I mean, I've definitely seen, and to your point about kind of us wanting to push our mentees
Yeah.
where we think they should be, right? Sometimes they won't listen to us, right? Because they have multiple mentees and they might be listening to another mentee, another mentor, I'm sorry. And that's okay, right? The advice that they're getting from that mentor is very different than the advice that we would be giving. We don't think that it's going to accomplish the objectives, but to your point, we let them make that mistake. But make sure that they know that, hey, hopefully everything goes great. If it doesn't, we'll pivot, we'll figure it out. And right, that's what you do as a friend, as a family member, as however you want to describe your relationship with your mentor mentee, right? I think it's more than just the mentor mentee relationship by this point.
Yeah, on that point, I had a woman of color once tell me, it was very same situation. I think you're making a mistake. I think this is a bad idea. And she went ahead, made the mistake. Fortunately, it was quick, right? You realize quickly as opposed to, and we're talking about it. And she said, throughout my life, people have told me no and that I can't do things so many times. I've hardened myself to it, right? I just don't hear no anymore. And the coaching she needed to get was, sometimes that no isn't necessarily a negative. Sometimes that no is a good thing. It's not that you can't do it or you're incapable or you're not good enough. That no is just that this is really a bad idea. But she had dealt with, in every piece of her academic and professional career, people just saying, no, you can't do it. And it was like, no, that's just another hurdle I have to get over. That's just another hurdle I have to get over. So kind of building that trust and understanding people and understanding how they communicate and how they hear things is key. But yeah, Larry, a question I have for you, and this is something I have trouble with myself, is how do we pull ourselves back when we're being, when we're being a little bit over enthusiastic because we know what what we think we have in front of us as a mentee, right? When you have several years of experience, you can see a little bit further. And you're like, oh no, go. I see what you're, but not overdoing it.
Yeah. And I think to answer your question, I mean, I will talk with myself, right? And in my head, and say, look, take 3 seconds, just take a breath and just don't respond. As much as you want to tell them to keep pushing or keep going or do something more than they're already doing. That's just not your role here. Your role is to help them accomplish their objectives and their goals, not your objectives and your goals. And it's an active step, you know what I mean? And I think I still do it, right? Because I think that I'm the type of person that's like, no, I mean, to your point, there's so much promise in what you have or what you're able to do. This is what you should be doing. This is where you should be. And just resisting that. As hard as it may be, because it's innate in all that we do, right? We tell our clients, like, no, you can't be doing this. And if they insist on doing it, we shake them, right? But and then finally, if they reject that advice, what do? We say, well, you're no longer our client, right? Or you're off on your own. And this is different, right? I think that you have to give people enough rope to hang themselves. You have to let people be the person that they want to be and recognize that, they're not going to be your image.
I kind of have an observation that's meaningful to me. I don't know if it will be to others or not, but you're the grandparent, not the parent.
Yes, absolutely. That's an amazing way to put it.
Sorry about the pop-ups. David, you talked about mentors that you have had. Are there particular traits that they had that you found really, really effective on you?
Patience.
Yeah.
I think patience and honesty, right? Sometimes giving the message you don't want to hear, or maybe you don't want to hear it at that time, but just patience and honesty, being willing to listen, listen to some of my nonsense ideas, and then nicely say the nonsense. I think is key. And just being very frank, like, hey, David, you have this one up. This is on you. You got to fix it. Right. Or straighten up. If you keep doing this, it's not gonna end up well. Or I think one of the hardest conversations I've had with a mentor, and they just said, you know, they looked at something and they were just like, you're better than this. That was it. Right. It's like, and that hurt. It was,
Yeah, sure.
you
That
know,
hits right there, right?
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. And it was, so yeah, being able to just say it and, sometimes knowing how to say it, right? Some people have the ability to do that, but some people don't, and they just say it, but they've built up so much trust so that even if it comes out the wrong way, you understand. So I think that patience and honesty are the best two traits a mentor can have.
Yeah. I've also been mentored by pretty amazing people over the years. And I would say the two things that always stood out to me that they did, they always gave me enough rope to hang myself, right? But they never let me do it. They pushed me out beyond what I thought were my limitations. And that allowed for real progress, right? It allowed for progress professionally, it allowed for progress personally. And the impacts are, or at least for me, they were far reaching. And they never instilled their own will, right? Like they understood that I was going to make my decisions whether they agreed with them or not. And as opposed to saying, do you really want to do that or you shouldn't do that? I remember very succinctly the words okay, right? Like okay was the way that they explained dissatisfaction with the decision without actually giving me that dissatisfaction. And I think that was important because that also allowed me to grow. So
I'm going to say that if I could just add to that along these lines,
please.
I do tax controversy, and a revenue officer who was older, he kept telling me he wasn't gonna be around long, he's gonna retire. And of course, he was on for 5, 6 years, and I kept teasing, why aren't you gonna retire? He said, oh, they won't let me go. I'm training all these young pups in the field. This is, before COVID. And he told me the story that the IRS hired a young lady to be a revenue officer, and he was gonna help train her and so forth in the field. They get in the car back when the IRS would go ring doorbells. And she starts to drive, and he says, stop. And she says, what? And he says, so what business are we in? And she said, well, we're in the tax collection business. And he said, no, we're in the people business. And he said, let's go. And he said the rest of the way, she was just staring off into space, thinking about what he said. And it just reminds me of something so short, and especially in tax, that can be so technical. And if people have a technical background, I think sometimes they lose sight of it's tax, but it's really about people.
100%.
That was the best thing I heard from a revenue officer I could remember.
And I think that's the best piece of advice for mentorship. It's about people, right? Yes, we want to make great tax professionals, but first it's about people, and you have to deal with the person first. So yeah, I really love that, Brian. Appreciate it.
I've got to jump off at 4, but I wanted to ask a quick question, I think.
Yes, sir.
Make sort of explicit what I'm implicitly hearing. Are we going to expect to be with some of our mentees at the ABA taxation meeting coming up in May? Both of you sort of mentioned that, taking them to dinners, taking them to section meetings, etc. Because if so, then I need to start making some plans. I've got some conflicting schedules with May.
No, to be fair, Cass, I think that's depends on you and the mentee. And I think part of the discussion. I think that's just, and again, Larry, keep me honest, I think that's just a recommendation of, what you can do, and what we found to be, nice and effective at times, but I don't think it's a requirement.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that many people are here because of their involvement with the tax section over a sustained period of time. So, I think in some ways the expectation might be that you'll be at those meetings, but you're not required to be at those meetings. And I don't think anybody's expecting you to change your own cadence in terms of meeting attendance.
Absolutely. Again, make it a team sport. If you know folks that are going, do the email introduction. Hey, this is my mentee. They're going to be there. They might pop by and say hi.
Yeah,
Right.
sounds good. And when we'll get the list, then that'll let us know how many we have, right?
Haley, I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit just about kind of maybe next steps for the mentors? It sounds like maybe it would be helpful.
Yes, sure. So today I notified all the students who will be getting a mentor. And so they all have been notified right before this call, and you will all be getting your mentees by the end of this month. For some of you, it's one-on-one. For some of you, it's a group. It depends on what you signed up for. So you'll have all their contact information. You'll have everything that you'll need. And back to, I don't know who just asked that question. I'm sorry, I forgot. I lost your name.
Cass, yeah.
Okay, yes, back to that question. Obviously it's not a requirement, but if you want to let your mentees know, the tax section meetings are completely free for students. So you can just, let them know that that's a really good resource for them if they're able to travel to DC. It's completely free for them, which is really a really cool perk for law students. So that you could just do a little plug for us if you want. But yeah, no worries, you don't have to attend with them. But with that, I know it is almost 4 o'clock, so I'll wrap things up. I just want to thank Larry and David so much for your expertise on this call. I really appreciate you speaking today. And to everyone else, thank you again for volunteering in your time today. And with that, if there are no more questions, I will end the call. Oh, we have a question, a hand raised. Yes.
I don't know if people are aware, but when the ABA has its tax meeting in Washington on Saturday afternoon, there's always a softball game, which is actually a prize fight. And it's at the head of the guy who heads up the tax division for the Department of Injustice. Okay? And it's in the yard, and it's a place to meet. Now, for these students, the Department of Justice Tax Division is recruiting like there's no tomorrow. They're looking for new people to work. So if you know anybody who has the time to get to that, okay, give me a call. I'll put them in touch. They can go to, if they have the time, they go to the softball prize fight meeting. And it's a great way if you want to work in the tax division with Department of Justice. Now, you're headquartered out of Washington, but you typically travel around the country.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, are there any other questions? I know it's 4 o'clock, so. Okay, have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
So, thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.